Hello everyone, this is Goosebumps Godzilla, and today I'm going to be talking about a book from Goosebumps Series 2000, and that is Attack of the Graveyard Ghouls. And mainly in this video, I'm going to be talking about sort of the main antagonist of the story, sort of not, and that is the Graveyard Ghouls. And I'm going to be trying to explain why in the book, Attack of the Graveyard Ghouls, these guys are described as being spirit-like beings and shadows and all of that stuff. And then, in like the cover art by Tim Jacobus and in the movie and all the video games that they're in and all of that, they appear as zombies. And so that's what I'm going to be trying to explain in this video. And so, first, before we continue though, spoiler warning for Attack of the Graveyard Ghouls, which is from, again I say, Goosebumps Series 2000. Also, we're going to be having a bunch of minor spoilers in this video. So, first let's start off with the Streets of Panic part. We're going to be having some minor spoilers for this story, mainly a certain group of characters in the book called the Shadow People. I barely even remember they were in the story until I started doing research on this video. So honestly, I'm not going to be spoiling that much for the Streets of Panic part. Just the Shadow People. And I just did a small amount of research for that. Also, we're going to be having some minor spoilers for The Haunter, which is from Goosebumps Most Wanted. It is actually the last special edition in the Most Wanted series. And anyway, guys, that's all the minor spoilers and spoilers that we're going to be having in this video. So really, you just have to watch out for Attack of the Graveyard Ghouls, because that's only going to be the big one that I'm going to be having some major spoilers for. And so anyway, guys, with that out of the way, let's continue on to the main point of this video. So, in Attack of the Graveyard Ghouls, this features the first appearance of probably one of the most popular Goosebumps monsters of all time, and that is the Graveyard Ghouls. And so basically, in the story, actually, the main protagonist goes up on this hill. I can't really remember the name of the hill or the name of the main character or anything like that. I think his name's Spencer or something like that. But anyway, he goes up on this hill, and basically, he gets possessed. He goes up there at night, and he accidentally knocks up someone's grave the previous day, one thing to note. And so basically, later on, he's up there. He had to get his brother's backpack, because earlier that day, when he knocked down that gravestone, he brought his brother's backpack, I think because he couldn't find his own. And so he accidentally left the backpack up there. So he's going up on the hill, and he's trying to get his brother's backpack, and then he keeps getting haunted, it seems like, by these ghosts or spirit-like things. And so anyway, one thing leads to another. He gets trapped inside the graveyard because two bullies, I think, tied him to a gravestone. And so then this graveyard ghoul basically possessed him, and then left the scene of the graveyard, with the main protagonist becoming a graveyard ghoul. And so earlier in the book, they do mention that basically the graveyard ghouls are these spirit-like beings, again I say, that kind of haunt the area of that hill because the hill is too high off the ground. So the zombies or something like that can't rest in peace. And, you know, basically the main protagonist becomes that, and he's trying to get his bodies back, and basically the graveyard ghouls, he meets a bunch of the graveyard ghouls who are described as shadow-like beings who just pace around the graveyard and are haunting the area and all of that stuff. And they basically tell him a way to basically escape from that and get his body back from the other guy. And the other guy who stole the main protagonist's body will most likely won't give it up. The main protagonist will have to force the other zombie to do so. And so that kind of kickstarts the whole plot of the book, which is basically the main protagonist turning from a rat to a cat to a spider and all of this stuff. He's switching bodies and all of that just to get to his real body, which is controlled by the graveyard ghoul that took over his body. And so that's pretty much the story for Attack of the Graveyard Ghouls. And overall, it's a pretty good story, but there are a few mysteries they do have for this story. And that is namely the Graveyard Ghouls. In the story, again I say, they're described as shadow-like people who are spirits and all that stuff that come out of the grave. But that's pretty much the only time, other than the Brandon Dorman cover art, that they're actually appearing like that. Because In, like, Goosebumps Night of Scares, they're described to be zombies. In Goosebumps Horror Town, they look like zombies. In the Goosebumps movie, they look like zombies. In Goosebumps Dead of Night, they look like zombies. And even in the Tim Jacobus art, in the original issue of Attack of the Graveyard Ghouls, the Graveyard Ghouls are zombies. And so basically in this video, I'm going to be trying to explain this strange mystery of how come in the book of Attack of the Graveyard Ghouls, the Graveyard Ghouls are described as being shadow-like beings, but then in all the other stuff, except for the Brandon Dorman cover art, they're more like zombie beings. And so anyway guys, that's going to be the main point of this video, so I have a couple of explanations for why I think this is possible. And so the first explanation I do have is revenge. And so just judging from likelihood, I think the only way this zombie-like thing would ever happen is if the Graveyard Ghouls themselves possess their own bodies. You might say, though, that would be kind of strange, since why wouldn't they do that before? They seem like they want to get down from the hill and cause all this mischief and stuff like that, but I honestly don't think so. The Graveyard Ghouls kind of wanted the main protagonist to stay up there, and I think if they wanted to leave, they could. After all, in one night, the main protagonist, who just got turned into a Graveyard Ghoul, possessed a rat and went down from the mountain. I mean, they could easily do that as well, and so I think the reason they didn't do that was because they like being Graveyard Ghouls, possibly, or they don't want to get down from the mountain. And so, I think, honestly, since they don't want to get down from the mountain, there has to be a reason that they go inside their old bodies. That's what I think. I think they went down their graves, got their old bodies back, and then basically came out of the graves to do something. But we don't know what that something is. I think most likely that is the case. The Graveyard Ghouls, possessed the dead bodies and all that stuff, then comes out of the ground and all of that. That's what I personally think. I don't know, comment down below what you think about that. But basically, why would they do this though? My first reason maybe is vengeance. Maybe the Graveyard Ghouls are wanting vengeance because, the guy who took over, or the Graveyard Ghoul that took over the main protagonist's body in the story, actually could be suspected of killing at least some of the Graveyard Ghouls in that area. Because, supposedly, when that Graveyard Ghoul that took over the main protagonist's body was 13, and I think another Graveyard Ghoul who took over the main protagonist's friend's body later on in the story, I believe, basically, they burnt down half of the entire town just for fun. And so these guys are really evil and all that. And I think they would be responsible for a large majority of the graves that we do see in Attack of the Graveyard Ghouls. And so if this is the case, maybe now that they know that, the evil zombies back again, burning down the town and all of that, which actually happens in the story, then I think the Graveyard Ghouls possibly would want vengeance, so they come down from the mountain to attack, the person who burnt down the town. And that seems perfectly plausible. That would explain why now they take over the zombies' bodies and all of that stuff and come down from the mountain, take over their own bodies, and come down from the mountain to the town to get revenge. But they never really appear in the story, so either they're super slow and they just do not appear, or it's a different reason. Because, keep in mind, they knew about this way before he started burning down the town. Maybe now that he was burning down the town, that got him really mad, or something like that, but I'm not really sure. I just personally don't really think this is likely, due to them not appearing in the book. And also, this wouldn't explain why they're evil in, the Goosebumps games like Horror Town, Night of Scares, and even in the Goosebumps film. What they'd be doing if it was vengeance against the guy who's burning down the town, I think they'd be good, I think they'd be good guys, instead of evil beings like in the Goosebumps film and all of that. So, while that is a plausible explanation, it's not the best explanation. And so the other explanation I came up with is something similar to the streets of Panic Park. Keep in mind, in Attack of the Graveyard Ghouls, the Graveyard Ghouls are sort of described as being shadow people. and you see actually shadow people in the streets of Panic Park. So without getting into too much detail into the story, basically the shadow people are these people who were killed in this one park called Panic Park. Basically, they're their spirits continuously searching for their dead bodies. And that's pretty much the plot, or not the plot, but, you know, the shadow people's thing. They go around Panic Park. It's stuck in this one day forever. It's really weird. But basically, the shadow people go around and they try to find their long-lost bodies. That's sort of their thing. And it seems like they'll do anything to do that, since they were working for the guy who pretty much is responsible for their deaths, and his name is the Menace. And so, I'm not really sure. I mean, it does seem plausible that they could be the Graveyard Ghouls. After all, maybe now that they found their bodies, they take over and they're evil or something like that. But this wouldn't explain why they're evil. And just looking at the cover art, it seems like they should know where their bodies are, and that is in their graves. Maybe, like, someone, like, Sloppy or something like that is keeping their bodies from them unless they do their bidding, or something like that. Or maybe it's, you know, the, what's it called, the evil bad guys from the story who burnt down half the town. Maybe they're keeping the bodies from them, but, I mean, from what I remember, the Graveyard Ghouls that were evil, actually, when they were scaring the main protagonist, actually, I think, put a disgusting head inside of the main protagonist's hat. And so, overall, do I think this is likely, you know, the fact that there are the shadow people? I mean, there are similarities. They're both shadow people, and this will explain why they can't rest, they can't find their bodies, instead of it being too high of a hill. I don't know, I kind of think that's a little odd, you know, why they can't rest in peace, because it's a hill. I mean, there's much higher places in the Goosebumps universe, most likely, that do not have, you know, zombies or graveyard ghouls and all that stuff just because it's too high. So, that would explain a lot of things, but then again, I think they'd be able to find their bodies. It's in their grave, and one of the zombies was in possession of a head, I believe, so overall, I would highly doubt that this is likely. It's a possibility, but not the most likely possibility. But what I think is the most likely possibility is that there's someone similar to the Haunter. So, really quick, without getting into too much spoilers, the Haunter is basically this kid. He was struck by lightning, I believe, when he was little, back a long time ago, and basically he's stuck in the house, and he's super, super lonely, and he wants to murder someone in order for him not to be lonely anymore. And so, do I think this is a possibility to be very similar to the Graveyard Ghouls? And yes, I think so. First, I know it kind of seems like a ghost, but first thing is, maybe the Haunter is not a ghost. I mean, maybe he's sort of more similar to the spirits or something like that you see in Attack of the Graveyard Ghouls. I don't think they go into any detail on this, but first thing is he's sort of shadow people like, and he's one of the only ghosts in Goosebumps, I believe, from what I remember, that actually are very similar to the Graveyard Ghouls, because he actually goes inside the main protagonist's body and sort of possesses him, sort of not. The main protagonist is sort of in control of himself at certain point in times, but at other point in times, the Haunter is sort of in control of the main protagonist's body. And so I find that very similar to Attack of the Graveyard Ghouls, just judging from, you know, they both can possess other people's bodies, both of them are ghost-like, spirit-like beings and all that. So there are some similarities between that and the Haunter, and guess what the Haunter's main motivation for possessing the main protagonist and all that stuff? Well, his main motivation in general is because he's lonely. I think this could be a possibility for the Graveyard Ghouls and Attack of the Graveyard Ghouls. After all, they kind of seemed excited about the main protagonist when he turned to a Graveyard Ghoul being there. Maybe they're sick of seeing the same people every single day, and they're lonely about that. That is a possibility, and maybe they possess their own bodies to take someone else to the graveyard or something like that so they won't be lonely anymore. It seems like a possibility. After all, that would make a huge similarity between the Haunter, more similarities than there already is, because, you know, the Haunter, again, he was lonely, and so he wanted to kill the main protagonist in this story in order to basically not be lonely anymore. And you can kind of see the same thing maybe with the Graveyard Ghouls. Maybe that's why they, you know, basically become zombies and go out and try to murder people. Because again, they seem like they wanted the main protagonist to stay a Graveyard Ghoul. After all, first thing, they seemed kind of happy about it. Like, no, now you're a Graveyard Ghoul. They kind of seemed slightly happy about that. And also, don't forget to mention that in the story, they kind of discouraged him trying to turn back into a rat and all of that stuff and going down from the mountain and all of that. And so maybe now they want to bring the main protagonist back to the grave with them because, you know, they really are lonely and all of that stuff. I mean, it is a possibility. It kind of wouldn't explain why they go down there before, but judging from most likelihood, I think this is the most likely scenario that I come up with. But anyway, guys, tell me what you think in the comment section below. Do you think the Graveyard Ghouls are similar to the Haunter from Goosebumps Most Wanted Special Edition, The Haunter? Or do you think they're similar to the Shadow People from Panic Park? Or do you think they come alive because they want revenge? But anyway, guys, tell me what you think in the comment section below. And that is the end of my video.